I'm coming to you right before I go to bed, so excuse the whole onesie look. It is pretty dope though. That's what happens. Hold on, because I swear that like one half is going in one direction, and the other half maybe not, because that looks right. I don't know what else. Anyways, so today's story time, as you can tell by the title, the day I bought my first car. So I know you may be thinking, oh, it's a little boring story, blah blah blah, but no. I'm a rebellious child, one, and two, my parents are dramatic and Nigerian. Not even African, they are Nigerian. In fact, not even just Nigerian. My parents are Yoruba people. So the dramatics, the reactions are just times 1,000. So this is kind of a continuation from like my running away story. I really can't believe that happened. But it's a continuation from my running away story. And so I moved back into the house in like June. And so June, and then let's fast forward to about October. So I started working in, no, this is not October, my bad. This was like November, maybe even January. I honestly don't remember, but I started working at Best Buy part-time in the mobile department because I love cell phones. I was like, why not? So I started working in there, and I was like borrowing my parents' car to go to work, and although work was like 15 minutes away from my parents' house, it literally was becoming a struggle on borrowing cars and working schedules out and all that. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go buy my own car. So I know how to work my dad. This may sound bad, but I know how to like work my dad into my own hands, I guess you can say. So what I did was I got the laptop and I'm like browsing on a website looking for cars. And I go to the dealership and just like sit there and I talk with one of the guys who now we call Uncle Lester. But basically I sat down with him. I was like, this is what I'm looking for, blah, blah. I don't want to buy anything today. I'm just looking. So I went there. I saw what I liked. I had a couple options in mind. And then I went to the bank. And then I got pre-approved for a car loan. So once I got that all sorted out, I knew what my budget was. And so I was like, okay, this is what my budget is. These are the options that fit in. So then I went online. When I got home, I went online and I like pulled up the options while my dad was sitting there. I was like, Dad, what do you think about this car? Like, I want to get this. And he's like, oh, that's a cool car. And I was like, what about this one? It's a stick shift, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, that's a cool car. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to take some time, look at this. I'll come back to you and I'll let you know what I want to do. And he was like, don't rush into it. Don't rush into it. Like, it's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, we're rushing into this because I need to get around. And so I came back downstairs. I was like, yep, I think I'm going to go test drive this one tomorrow. And he was like, okay, cool. And so I go to the dealership the next day and I'm test driving this car. And I'm like, okay, you know, I don't really know how to drive a stick shift because it was a stick shift that I was going to end up getting. But I want to get this car anyway. So I had a person that I knew. She called up her brother, and her brother helped me like test drive the car and make sure everything was cool with it, and it worked fine, and the gears were shifting good and everything. So we sat down and started doing paperwork, and I was like, shoot, I should probably call my dad. So I called my dad, and my dad likes to do this thing where he like pretends that he's listening, but he's really not. And I knew that was happening, but I was like, you know what? I need to get a car, so it is what it is. I'm going to play this off. I'm going to make it work. So I called him. I was like, Dad, you know that car I showed you yesterday? Yeah, I'm at the dealership. I'm going to sign the papers for it. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah. And like, you could tell he was watching CNN, and his mind was not on the conversation. But I was like, Dad, I'm going to get this car. And he was like, okay, cool, bye. So that conversation was already had. I was good to go, right? No. So I ended up getting the car. I drove back with this girl's brother, and he drove the car that I just purchased because it was stick and I could not drive it. Dumbest decision ever. Maybe not, but like at that point in time, I could have made a better choice. But so he drove that car back, and then I drove my dad's car, which is what I picked him up in. And so we got back to my parents' house. My dad's like, whose car is this? And I'm like, it's mine. I just bought it. He was like, what do you mean you just bought it? And I was like, you said I could buy the car. Like, what do you mean? What? And he's like, I didn't say, I was like, Dad, you were on the phone and you said that you said that it was fine, blah, blah, blah. He's like, did you even run it by your mom? And I was like,
I told you, like, what?
and he's like, no, you have to tell your mom too. I'm like, so I have to have two separate conversations. This is still a thing with my parents, by the way. You can't just tell one parent what's going on. You have to have the conversation with both of them. Like, isn't the thing about relationships and marriage and all that stuff about communicate? Like, why don't y'all communicate? I don't have to have this conversation twice. But anyways, I digress. So he was like, did you run this by your mom? I was like, no. I told you. And he was like, no, you got to talk to your mom about it. So then he goes to tell my mom. My mom's like, and then he pulls my uncle into. My uncle's like, well, there's a lemon law in Minnesota. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with the car. I'm keeping the car. I just don't know how to drive a stick shift. And he's like, you bought a stick? You bought a car that you can't even drive? What's wrong with you? When I tell you, my dad did not let me drive that car for like 2 months. And when he did, like when he was starting to teach me how to drive it, like we would do like 20-minute lessons in my high school because they had this really weird hill and like learning how to drive up a hill, like starting from the bottom of the hill driving up is a thing that you've got to know when driving a stick shift. So he didn't let me drive the car for months. He drove the car, actually. He didn't even let it sit there. He drove the car while I took his rusty old pickup or SUV to work. It was terrible. I was so annoyed, but I was like, you know what? It is what it is, because one day I'm going to drive this car, and if I can't drive this car, then I'm going to transfer the loan to his name, because I'm not about to make a car payment with this car that I can't. Man, I was so annoyed. But he let me drive it. I think it was like December. He was like, I don't want you like getting into an accident because it's a stick shift and it's winter, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I totaled the car. That car lasted me about 4 months. But the thing is, and keynotes everybody, like, thing that everyone should know, don't buy a Mazda. The body composition of Mazdas are terrible. Like, I don't know what material they use for their cars, but don't do that. That's my own personal opinion, by the way. But yeah, so he didn't let me drive the car for months. Will I do it again? Hell yes, because I needed a way to get around. Like my goal in mind was not that I'm gonna work a part-time job for the rest of my life, no. I plan to get a full-time job, and with that, I'm not gonna be doing carpooling with my mom every morning, like, and then I have to listen to KTIS. No, not gonna happen. So I had a plan in mind, get my car, start working a full-time job down the line. That's exactly what happened. And at that point, I was working 2 jobs. I had a full-time job with a company, and then I was working a part-time job overnight and Best Buy whenever I could pick up shifts. So it was a crazy moment in my life, and I knew I was gonna need a car. So I prepared myself. Should I have gone about another way? Honestly, you know what? I feel like the way that I've gone about things, I don't regret, because my parents are kind of like those people where if you say no and you take it, then that's that. Nothing will ever come your way. Like, they're not gonna bring it to you, and if they do, it's gonna be years down the line, or they'll suggest it to you later and be like, well, I think that you didn't I say? So I feel like the reason why I go about things the way I do with my parents is because I know that I'm not going to get it unless I go for it by myself. But that is the end of my story. It was pretty short, but ridiculous. We're still going through these situations, to be honest, but it is what it is, right? Families are different. My family is definitely different from everyone else's, but you gotta love them, right? Well, thank you guys for watching. Tune in tomorrow. I've got another crazy story for y'all. I actually love this story for tomorrow. It's great. It's freaking awesome. But thank you guys for watching. Enjoy your evening. Deuces.